Hey everyone, I want to tell you about Cozy Earth. It's the world's softest sheets. They keep you cool, dry, and comfy all night long. They're moisture wicking, breathable, and they even get softer with every wash. They have PJ sets. Who can't get behind PJ sets? Valentine's is coming up. Get your wife a pajama set. It's Oprah approved. They have free shipping on orders over $50 and a 100-night sleep trial on those bedding sets and a 10-year warranty. And right now, our listeners get to save 40% off using our code INFOGO at CozyEarth.com. Find the link in the show notes. Luxury, comfort, and cool sleep await you at CozyEarth.com. Welcome to the podcast. I'm William.
And I'm Kat.
And that makes this info on the go.
Answering questions you may not want to know.
Well, it depends on if you're in the South Carolina or not, right?
I mean, yeah.
By the way, we've missed the mark on our states in order. So, South Carolina is the eighth state to ratify the Constitution, and they did that on May 23rd, 1788. And it really marked a turning point in the American experiment, with democracy, right?
hmm let's picture this. It's late May in Charleston. It's humid. You got heavy air pressing down from the Atlantic.
Hold on. So, if you live in South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, Alabama, you know about this heavy air.
It's heavy. It weighs on you, and
It
it sticks
does.
to you. There's no escaping this.
There is no escaping it, no.
Ugh. The city hums with conversation and horse hooves echoing off the cobblestone streets, clip clop, clip clop. Ships crowd the harbor, sails billowing gently, a reminder that commerce and the sea are South Carolina's lifeblood, and the scent of salt, tar, and molasses drifts through the narrow lanes.
Molasses and salt.
Mm-hmm.
That
And
actually,
tar.
and tar. Forget about the tar. The salt and molasses actually sounds kind of good, though.
Right, that doesn't sound bad.
No. But inside Charleston's State House, men with powdered wigs and linen coats, well, they gather in the assembly chamber, right? The windows are open because of that humid air, but the air barely moves because it's so heavy, like Kat said. And you can see the sweat beads on their little brows as fans kind of flutter. And
I
I'm,
can hear the sound of fans in my head.
have you ever pictured the southern scene where somebody's in church and you see the women with the fans?
And they swoon or whatever. They faint. Yeah.
Yeah.
Emma Swan in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes. But okay, let's get back to this. So the delegates, they seem to murmur in low tones. Tensions really thick in that summer air. But the question before them, should South Carolina join the new federal union or stand apart?
You know, and outside, small groups of citizens cluster on the steps and in taverns nearby, whispering about what's happening inside. Some cheer on the idea of a strong nation that can protect trade and ensure stability.
While others, they kind of worry about the new constitution, which gives too much power to faraway politicians in Philadelphia, and the divide mirrors the state itself. Coastal planners versus inland farmers, wealth and power versus independence and mistrust.
We got John Rutledge, a dignified, deliberate, and advocate for ratification, his voice calm but firm.
Then you have Rawlins Lowndes, a staunch opponent, and he warns the delegates about surrendering too much authority to the federal government.
In the back rows, younger men like Charles Pinckney listen intently, knowing this debate will shape their generation's future.
On May 23rd, 1788, South Carolina became the eighth state to ratify the United States Constitution. But this wasn't a simple or unanimous decision.
Behind that vote lay a century of conflict and compromise from the colony's earliest days as an English experiment to its role as a wealthy slaveholding powerhouse.
The men gathered that spring weren't just voting on a document. They were deciding what kind of nation America would become and what kind of place South Carolina would hold within it.
Power, profit, fear, and freedom all were on the table that day.
So, from South Carolina's founding in the 1600s, it was born from a royal charter and a dream of aristocratic perfection. Carolina quickly became a colony built on ambition and on the backs of enslaved laborers. It would grow rich on rice, indigo, and trade, but at a moral cost that would shape its destiny.
In the east, Charleston's wealthy planters connected to Europe and eager for strong trade networks. In the west, frontier farmers and veterans of the Revolution suspicious of centralized power and urban elites. And this internal divide wasn't new. It had simmered since before independence and now threatened to shape South Carolina's vote.
Yeah, so ratification wasn't inevitable. It was a gamble on unity, on the promise of prosperity, and on a vision of America that balanced freedom and control. That gamble would make South Carolina one of the Constitution's earliest champions, and ironically, decades later, one of the first to abandon the Union it helped to build.
In 1663, King Charles II rewarded 8 loyal supporters, the Lords Proprietors, with vast lands stretching from Virginia to Spanish Florida. And the charter was intended to create a buffer zone against Spanish claims in Florida and to expand English influence in the New World. The Lords envisioned a grand, orderly province, part feudal experiment, part commercial venture.
The proprietors, like philosopher John Locke, helped draft the fundamental constitutions of Carolina. It promised religious tolerance and representative assemblies, but also enshrined a rigid social hierarchy with hereditary nobility and self like tenant farmers. In theory, it was a utopian. In practice, it was unworkable in the rough frontier of America. He had this grand vision, right? In
Yeah,
theory, but in practice, it really just it could not work out.
not at all.
Yeah.
Colonists began arriving in the late 1660s, not directly from England, but largely from Barbados, where planters were running out of land. These Barbadian settlers brought with them the plantation model, which were large tracts of land, enslaved African labor, and a focus on export crops. Early settlements took root near the Ashley and Cooper rivers and fertile ground for what would become Charleston.
Yeah, the subtropical climate supported rice and indigo, but settlers faced disease, conflict with the native tribes, and frequent hurricanes. But still, the lure of profit, well, it was powerful because people are drawn to money, right?
Mhm.
And the colony grew rapidly under its blend of ambition and exploitation.
The founding of Charlestown happened in 1670, and it was named for King Charles II. The original settlement stood on the west bank of the Ashley River before moving to its current peninsula in 1680. Its location, surrounded by rivers with easy harbor access, made it ideal for trade.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, everybody, we want to tell you about strong coffee. Every morning it starts with a choice. You can settle for just coffee, or you can rise up with strong coffee. And it's the world's strongest cup of joe. Strong isn't just a drink, it's a movement. It stands for striving to reach our natural greatness.
It's born from one simple need: to be better. They rebuilt coffee from the ground up, infusing organic coffee with collagen, protein, nootropics, and functional ingredients that fuel your body and sharpen your mind. No crash, no compromises, just clean energy, focus, and flavor that fires you up.
Yeah, so whether you're chasing kids, chasing goals, or chasing greatness, don't just do it with coffee, do it with strong coffee. And our listeners can save 20% off just by using our code INFOGO at checkout. Hey, if you're looking for your favorite band or sports team or TV show, check out Old Glory. They've been in operation since 1969 and they have over 300,000 items. You know, they have from the Beatles all the way to Metallica, NFL, NBA. It really doesn't matter what you're looking for. They have tees, hoodies, hats, gifts, everything a true fan could ever want. And it's family owned and operated. They have fast shipping, free standard delivery on every order. And you know what? Our listeners get a 15% off at checkout using our code INFOGO. You can find the link in the show notes. Yeah, and Charleston, well, it quickly became the busiest port in the southern colonies, exporting rice, indigo, naval stores, and deerskins. Ships from England, the West Indies, and Africa arrived daily, bringing luxury goods and enslaved people through the transatlantic slave trade, while wealthy planners built elegant townhouses along Broad Street and the Battery, flaunting European fashions and furniture.
Early Charleston was a crossroads of cultures, a melting pot, if you will. There was English, French Huguenot, Scots Irish, African, and indigenous peoples. Enslaved Africans brought skills in rice cultivation and ironworking, as well as languages and traditions that shaped Gula culture along the coast.
The colony's assembly established in 1671, and it gave settlers some self-rule, though power remained concentrated among wealthy planters. The Anglo Church was established as the official church, and religious minorities, while tolerated, often faced restrictions.
Restrictions, you say?
Oh, yeah, they definitely faced restrictions because they didn't have any money to buy any, you know, non
Right.
restrictions.
By the early 1700s, Charleston was both refined and violent. It was a city of fine manners, slavery, piracy, and reoccurring fires. Oof. And it stood as the beating heart of a colony defined by wealth and inequality.
Yeah, you had some rising divisions, by 1712. From the beginning, the northern and southern parts of the original Carolina had very different identities. North Carolina, well, it developed smaller farms, fewer enslaved people, and more of a self-sufficient frontier society. While on the other hand, South Carolina, it evolved into a coastal, plantation driven economy tied to the Atlantic world.
There was the official separation in 1712. Administrative difficulties and geographic distance led to the official split into two colonies. So South Carolina's capital remained Charleston, a hub of wealth, trade, and politics.
Yeah, and then you had royal control from 1719 to 1729. And this led to discontent with the lords proprietors, and the rule grew. Colonists resented mismanagement and lack of protection from Spanish and native attacks. In 1719, the people of South Carolina, well, they rebelled against proprietary rule and petitioned the crown for direct governance. By 1729, both Carolinas became royal colonies, and this gave them more direct ties to Britain and paving the way for even greater economic expansion.
The colony now firmly embraced its plantation aristocracy, its economy built on enslaved labor and export wealth. The political elite, families like the Pinckneys, Middletons, and Rutledges, began to shape the state's identity and would later dominate Revolutionary era politics.
It was a society built on slavery, demographics and dependence. By the 1730s, enslaved Africans made up the majority of South Carolina's population, an extraordinary statistic, Even among southern colonies, the labor-intensive rice and indigo plantations required a massive, disciplined workforce, and enslaved Africans became the backbone of South Carolina's economy.
Along the coastal plantations and sea islands, Africans from rice growing regions of West Africa developed a unique language and culture. The Gulagichi traditions preserved African words, crafts, cuisine, and spiritual practices, influencing low country life even today.
So let's get into that Stono Rebellion in 1739. It was early one September morning. About 20 enslaved men gathered near the Stono River, armed themselves, and marched south southward toward Spanish Florida, where freedom was, well, it was promised. They burned plantations and killed several white colonists before being overtaken and brutally suppressed. The uprising terrified the white population and led to the Negro Act of 1740, which imposed severe restrictions on enslaved peoples.
Diminished everything. It enslaved people's movement, their assembly, and even their education.
Yeah, thank you. I was trying to figure out what to say there. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Despite the growing anxiety, planters continued to import enslaved Africans in huge numbers. Can't stop the plantations. They must
No,
go on. Rice exports soared. Charleston became one of the wealthiest cities in North America, and the contradiction deepened. South Carolina was a land of prosperity built on oppression.
just to think of all the labor that they're importing. I mean, it was really built on the backs of the slaves, right?
Absolutely.
Before the Revolution, South Carolina was one of the wealthiest and most British loyal colonies, mainly in Charleston and the Lowcountry. Elite planters benefited from trade protections, which, were favorable, had favorable tariffs and military support from Britain. Many initially saw rebellion as risky, threatening both wealth and social order. They didn't really want to give up what they had going on there.
Not at all. The Stamp Act in 1765 and the Townshend Acts in 1767 disrupted trade and angered merchants. Low country elites grumbled about taxation without representation, but also worried about losing their economic advantages. And in the backcountry, small farmers felt ignored by colonial elites, feeling resentment toward both Britain and the coastal establishment. So, smuggling, protests, and boycotts became more common, especially among Charleston merchants.
Yeah, but you had some key figures during this time too. You had Christopher Gadsden. He was a fiery patriot, and he really becomes the voice of advocate for resistance, right? And then you have Henry Lawrence, which was a wealthy planter and trader, initially cautious, gradually joins the patriot cause as tensions start to escalate.
So, following the outbreak of war in Massachusetts, South Carolina forms the first provincial Congress in 1775, and delegates convened to organize militia, seize arms, and assert local governance independent of royal authority.
So, the Declaration of Independence of 1776, South Carolina formally joins the other colonies in rejecting British rule. And so the colony becomes a revolutionary leader in the South, passing resolutions supporting the Continental Congress.
This kind of creates the state's first formal government under independence, and it establishes a unicameral legislature and executive council, and that was influenced by revolutionary ideals, but still protecting elite planter interests. Voting rights largely limited to white men with property and reflecting the colony's class and racial hierarchy.
We talked about that somewhere else about voting rights, didn't we?
hmm almost everywhere, I think.
But military mobilization, militias from across the colony often divided along regional lines. Coastal ports like Charleston provided support, while backcountry fighters, well, they prepared for guerrilla style engagements.
Guerrilla warfare, huh?
Yeah, guerrilla warfare in South Carolina. Who would have thunk it?
Sounds like a good enough place. Uh, the war starts coming south in 1779, and the British Southern strategy here was to focus on the South, hoping loyalists will claim control. South Carolina, with its wealthy and divided loyalties, became a prime target.
Yeah, and the fall of Charleston in 1780, as British forces laid siege on Charleston, capturing the city in May of 1780, and over 5,000 American troops surrendered, which was one of the largest surrenders of American forces during the war. And the loss, well, it devastated the morale and left the Lowcountry under British control.
Well, loyalist militias clash with patriot forces in a brutal internal conflict, of course. Families and neighbors fight against one another, plantations are raided, crops destroyed, and civilians terrorized. Violence spreads across the backcountry, where allegiances are often pragmatic rather than ideological.
So some of the turning points here was, the Battle of Kings Mountain in 1780, where the Patriot militias, mostly frontiersmen, well, they defeated the Loyalist forces. And this really showed the power of local resistance and undermines British control in the interior.
And then we have the Battle of Cowpens in 1781. The Continental Army and militia forces score a major victory, weakening British campaigns in the South. General Daniel Morgan's tactics demonstrate innovative guerrilla style strategies.
Then in 1782, you had the British evacuation. After losing battles and facing logistical challenges, well, the British troops, well, they leave Charleston and South Carolina, and they return it to the Patriot control. And the state celebrates liberation, but faces immense challenges.
I mean, for sure, plantations are damaged, rice fields neglected, and trade positively disrupted.
I was just going to say they no longer have that British protection, so now they're going to have to figure things out on their own, right?
Right. Wealthy planters lose property and labor resources, while merchants struggle to rebuild shipping networks.
Social and political divisions, because the loyalist families, they would often flee, leaving property disputes and tensions in their wake. Patriots who survived the war, well, they must reconcile backcountry and lowcountry interests, forging a fragile state unity.
But despite the devastation, South Carolina begins rebuilding institutions and preparing to navigate a post war America. These experiences, division, resilience, and negotiation, will shape debates leading to the ratification of the U.S. Constitution in 1788.
Yeah, so let's get on that road to ratification, right? So the Articles of Confederation, well, they struggle. Weak central government under the Articles. Congress cannot levy taxes or regulate commerce. South Carolina's planters and merchants face chaotic trade, uh, delayed payments, and unstable markets. Then you have economic and political pressures. Rice and indigo exports, well, they're threatened by foreign tariffs and piracy. Then you have planters. They fear lack of federal protection for shipping lanes across the Atlantic and Caribbean. And the calls grow for a stronger government that can enforce contracts, protect property, and stabilize trade. Then you have the social tensions. Wealthy elites fear social unrest without federal support. Backcountry farmers worry about being overshadowed by coastal elites. They kind of recognize the need for a national unity.
So then we have the Constitutional Convention of 1787. Delegates from South Carolina, like John Rutledge, which was the former governor, experienced lawyer, champion of Southern interests. You have Charles Cotesworth Pinckney, which was a diplomat, military veteran, strong advocate for federal authority over commerce. Charles Pinckney, which was the younger delegate, key in drafting proposals balancing state sovereignty with federal power. and Pierce Butler, which was a wealthy planner focused on slavery, protections, and property rights. The key priorities here were to protect slavery and ensure enslaved population counted toward political representation, the Three-Fifths Compromise. It was also to safeguard wealthy planters, property, and economic influence, and to strengthen federal authority to protect trade and ports critical to the Lowcountry economy.
And then you had debate at home, low country versus upcountry. Low country elites, well, they supported ratification to stabilize trade, enforce contracts, and protect the slave economy. They wanted to promote the new constitution as a path to commerce, prosperity, and national security. Upcountry farmers, well, they were skeptical of centralized authority. They feared high taxes, urban dominance, and the loss of local control. They felt their interests would be overlooked compared to the wealthy low country planners. And the enslaved population and representation, though enslaved people, they couldn't vote, their presence is central to political calculations. You had the Three-Fifths Compromise, boost low country political power in Congress. And these tensions, well, they highlighted a divide between coastal elites and backcountry settlers.
And on May 23rd, 1788, was the vote at the convention in Charleston. Delegates convene in a state house, historic and crowded with tension. Heated debate unfolds over ratification, federal power, and state sovereignty. Papers, speeches, and petitions fill the hall. Fans flicker in the humid May air, and then the vote. 149 delegates vote in favor, 73 against, and South Carolina becomes the eighth state to ratify the United States Constitution. The decision reflects a compromise between elite interests and regional tensions and the need for national stability.
Man, 73 to 149. I mean,
Most were in favor, that's for sure.
yeah, for sure. So, aftermath and celebration, the immediate reaction was church bells rang across Charleston, marking this historic event, right? Taverns and streets, well, they filled with cheering citizens, especially coastal merchants and planters. Then newspapers, well, they hailed the ratification as a triumph for commerce, stability, and progress. Pamphlets and letters, well, they started circulating, promoting unity and highlighting South Carolina's leadership role in forming the new nation. There was still this lingering unease. Many backcountry farmers remained skeptical of federal authority. You had regional and class divisions; they persisted, foreshadowing future political and social conflicts within the state. And the vote, it really set the stage for South Carolina's dual identity, a champion of the Union, but yet deeply protected of its own interest, especially when it came to slavery.
Now, leaders like Charles Cotesworth Pinckney and Charles Pinckney continued to influence national politics after the ratification. They helped draft early federal laws, advised on foreign policy, and contributed to shaping the young republic's governance. Their priorities reflected Southern economic and social interests, ensuring the South retained a powerful voice in the federal government.
Yeah, the Bill of Rights and Representation, South Carolina's delegates, well, they argued for protections of property rights and individual liberties, aligning with elite planter interests. The Three-Fifths Compromise, negotiated during ratification, counted enslaved individuals as three-fifths of a person for representation and taxation purposes. This gave South Carolina and other southern states disproportionate political influence, cementing slavery's role in national politics for decades. When we talk about preserving individual rights and property rights, they're talking about owning slaves and counting it as property. Just want to be clear about that.
And only 3/4 per person.
3/5.
3/5, excuse me.
We're going to get into that whole thing a little bit later in another episode, but yeah, the three-fifths right.
Yeah, not even a whole person.
But
Oh,
they did that for taxation purposes and to say, hey, I own slaves, so I get another vote.
right. The state's early involvement in federal decisions demonstrated its strategic importance in shaping the U.S. Constitution and the early republic. South Carolina became a model of how a single state could maximize influence while protecting regional interests.
And then expansion of the plantation system, rice and indigo. Well, it still remained a mainstay through the late 18th century. And, cotton would come along and dominate after the invention of the cotton gin in 1793. But wealth was concentrated among Lowcountry planters who dominated politics, commerce, and society at the time.
And Charleston was a hub of wealth. The city grows into one of America's richest urban centers with grand homes, bustling ports, and sophisticated cultural institutions. Wealth, however, is extremely unequal, with the majority of the population, enslaved people, and poor farmers excluded from prosperity. There were still some social tensions, of course. The deep economic divides really exacerbated regional tensions between low country elites and upcountry farmers. Enslaved Africans provide the labor underpinning this wealth, creating a society built on exploitation and oppression.
Economic and cultural foundations, the same characteristics that encouraged South Carolina to ratify the Constitution, economic power, regional pride, and slavery, also fueled a later sense of exceptionalism. The state's leaders cultivated a strong belief in state sovereignty and the primacy of the Southern plantation economy.
But this was kind of a prelude to 1860. As national debates over slavery intensified, South Carolina sees federal attempts to limit slavery as a threat to its social and economic order. The irony, though, the state that helped build the Union and secure its early federal influence becomes the first to secede in December 1860, sparking the Civil War.
South Carolina's early power illustrates a complex legacy, one of vision, influence, and prosperity, but also of deep inequality, entrenched slavery, and a history of division. This duality echoes throughout its later history, shaping both state identity and national debates for generations to come.
Here's some history and politics for you. South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union in 1860, setting off the Civil War. The palmetto tree on the state flag comes from Fort Moultrie, where the fort's palmetto log walls helped withstand a British cannon attack in 1776. So the state capital, Columbia, is one of the few U.S. capitals named after a poetic name for America rather than a person. And a unique constitution fact: South Carolina's original constitution in 1776 was one of the few that restricted voting to property owning white men, even during Revolutionary times.
Second largest beach in the United States is Myrtle Beach and Hilton Head, located in South Carolina. And these areas are famous. But the state actually has over 187 miles of coastline, with some beaches rarely visited. And then to get out of the beaches, swamps and wildlife. South Carolina is home to Congaree National Park, one of the tallest deciduous forests in the United States, with trees over 160 feet tall. I would love to go there.
That sounds awesome.
I've never been there. I've never even heard of it until this.
We must go.
Yes. All right. That's another field trip. Man, we got tons of field trips booked.
Yes. Yes. Our map is getting widely pinpointed.
I say we just hit all 50 states.
Road trip.
South Carolina has one of the densest populations of imported fire ants in the United States.
Imported. Excuse me.
Import,
Imported fire ants. Why would you want to bring fire ants to you?
yeah, so it's a painful little invaders, right? And they are the fire ant capital. They can stay in South Carolina. Don't
You
let them come here.
You can keep them. I don't want them.
Yeah. Y'all can import some more and just house them over there in South Carolina. In fact, we can import some from Georgia to your place.
You can have them.
Call us. I'll bring them to you.
So some culture and food is next on the list. Charleston claims one of the first records of ice cream in America, served to colonial elites in the 18th century.
Ooh, go South Carolina for that.
The unique dessert Hoppin' John, which is a dish of black-eyed peas and rice, and is eaten on New Year's Day for good luck, a tradition dating back to African influences.
Have you ever heard of that? I have.
Uh, I've heard of the black-eyed peas and collard greens.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So the Hoppin' John there. Okay. Yeah, black eyed peas and rice. And then you put a little sausage off in it too.
Right, right.
Anyway,
Uh, there are some barbecue differences too. South Carolina is known for four distinct barbecue sauces: mustard based, which is Midlands, vinegar based, upstate, tomato vinegar, coastal, and ketchup based.
but I love all the Carolina barbecue sauces. I am not knocking it at all.
I don't knock very many barbecue sauces.
Yeah. You knocked my peanut butter barbecue sauce. You said, no, I don't think I could do that.
I didn't try it though. I
Okay.
have to try it.
Okay. So pineapples were a sign of hospitality in colonial Charleston. Wealthy hosts would display real pineapples outside their homes. Well, this would just to be to say, hey, we've arrived.
I
Okay.
don't know. That's a different symbol for pineapples than I've heard. They have a frogmore stew, and it's not a stew, but a Lowcountry boil, which includes shrimp, sausage, corn, and potatoes. It was named after Frogmore, South Carolina, and often mistaken for a traditional soup.
Charleston was one of the first American cities to execute pirates publicly, and the gallows were on Marion Square, and that's the hanging of the pirates there.
Dang,
Yeah.
rough. There are some odd laws too. There are no self-service gas station until 1980.
Wow.
So some rural counties in South Carolina didn't allow self-service gas stations until the 1980s.
So the state has several abandoned towns from rice plantations, and some of these are only accessible by boat or air. So ghost towns galore.
There are historic bridges. The Arthur Ravenel Jr. Bridge in Charleston is one of the longest cable-stayed bridges in the Western Hemisphere, and it replaced a bridge haunted by legends of fatal collapses.
And South Carolina is home to the world's largest fire hydrant, and this is in Columbia. And it claims that it is the world's largest fire hydrant, and it's a roadside attraction.
The state dance for South Carolina is called the Carolina Shag, and it's a funky swing style dance originating from beach music culture.
The Beach Creek area and some parts of the Lowcountry have strange local UFO sightings dating back decades. Decades.
It's also part of the Appalachians.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history there.
I want to one day. I know I wouldn't be able to make the whole trail, but I would like to take 2 weeks and really hike the Appalachian Trail.
Mm.
I would like to start in Georgia and work my way.
That's a long way.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can hike. I don't know how many miles it is a day or whatever, but I know I don't want to do the whole Appalachian Trail. I just want to do 14 days.
You probably get to South Carolina, probably a little further.
Yeah, maybe. And then I have to call somebody. Hey, man, can y'all Uber me a ride home?
Mm,
My phone would be dead by then, though, wouldn't it?
for sure, unless you had one of those chargers with you and you hadn't gotten lost.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a power bank, but for 14 days, like I would be wanting to play games and like I would have to use Google Maps to figure out where I was at every day.
Then I guess you better get a
A solar powered
solar,
one.
yeah, solar panel.
Check that dude out walking with a solar panel on his head, charging his phone. That's a nifty idea. To our techie friends out there, just saying it might be something.
Right. Instead of an umbrella hat, you can have it as a solar panel. Oh Lord.
Let's
It,
get back to this.
so we did talk about some agriculture up here, but let's kind of talk about it a little more. We had the rice and indigo dominance in the 18th century, and those were the primary cash crops, especially in the Lowcountry.
And then the success of plantations, well, they relied heavily on enslaved African labor with using their knowledge of rice cultivation, which was brought from West Africa.
And after the invention of the cotton gin in 1793, cotton became a major crop, particularly in the upcountry.
And South Carolina is famous for its peaches. Once rivaling Georgia's production, the state still markets itself as home of the sweetest peaches. And you know what? After doing our Georgia episode, South Carolina can have the peaches. We have the peanuts and pecans.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh, and the broiler chickens too. So we have chicken wings. Just saying.
Not just peaches.
The top row crops in South Carolina are soybeans, corn, and cotton.
Ooh. The state is a leading producer of sod and turf grass, supplying much of the southeast U.S.
Tomatoes, cucumbers, watermelons, and blueberries are widely grown, especially for local and regional markets.
There's some livestock and poultry production too. South Carolina is a major producer of broiler chickens, contributing significantly to U.S. poultry exports.
But Georgia is the number one producer of broilers, by the way. Cattle farming is important, though smaller in scale than poultry. Dairy production is growing regionally.
Pork production is significant, especially in the upstate region.
So, agriculture remains a key economic sector, employing tens of thousands and supporting rural communities.
South Carolina has hundreds of farmers markets, highlighting local produce and promoting farm to table culture.
And the state celebrates its peach heritage with an annual festival, such as the South Carolina Peach Festival in Gaffney.
There's Carolina gold rice, and this heirloom variety was once a staple of plantation exports and is now a luxury gourmet rice grown by specialty farmers.
And if I'm not mistaken, you can only get the Carolina gold rice from the southern part of the United States. If
Oh,
there's a farmer out there, and if I'm wrong, let me know, okay? Though not a crop, sweetgrass harvesting for basket weaving is a unique agricultural tradition tied to African heritage in the Lowcountry. I did not know that either.
South Carolina also has a surprising number of farms dedicated to vermiculture or worm farming for organic fertilizer.
I thought you was going to say fishing.
Worms.
But I mean, you can still fish with them, can't you?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Could do some good bass fishing. While you're on the coast there, stop by one of the worm farms. I don't know. I know on the coast they use, shrimp and crabs, but who knows? You could still catch one with a worm.
You catch something with a worm,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good fishing in South Carolina. A lot of good hunting too.
I bet.
Anyway, that's all I've got, Kat.
Me too. If you would like to support this podcast, tell a friend and help get the word out.
If you would like to help us keep the show going, you can do so at Patreon. You can find that link in the show notes.
And as always, William and I want to thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you.
I was going to say join the Facebook group at Info on the Go
Over there, you can share with us your show ideas.
or ask us a question.
But whatever you do, make sure you follow us wherever you get your podcast. If you're on Apple, it's in the top right-hand corner. If you're on Spotify, it's a little check mark. iHeart has a little button where you can follow us. It really does help us.
You can also send us a text using the link in the show notes or leave a review.
It really does. Those reviews does help others find us. But you can also email us at
infoonthegopodcast@gmail.com.
and yes, that is all one word. And yes, and you can find that email link in the show notes. Till next time.
Stay curious.